Hello and welcome to Tech Deal's $1,500 Ryzen 7 1700 computer build guide. This is a suggested build guide for a 1440p gaming computer, a content creation machine, or a professional use machine. It's a balanced build guide, so everything in here is roughly equal in terms of quality, capabilities, etc. Now, since this is a custom build guide, you can absolutely build it any way you want. Add or remove components, make it $200 more or $200 less as you prefer. It certainly is your choice. But this right here is a very nice all-around computer that will last you for many years to come. Now, I'm going to talk about specifically each of these parts later in this video. I'm going to talk about why I chose the case, why I chose the motherboard, why I put money into certain components versus others, and what you might choose to do differently depending upon what's important to you. Again, as I said, this is a suggested build guide. I certainly don't expect everybody to build what you see here on the screen, but it's a good starting point, and when I give you the reasons and rationale behind each of my part choices, it will help you make up your own mind for what makes the most sense for you. Now, linked down in the video description will be all of these items to both Amazon and Newegg. Now, some of these parts I picked from Amazon, some I picked from Newegg. The prices are different between both places. If you want to get this price, you will have to split your purchase between the two stores because neither store offers the lowest price on everything. By all means, compare prices because they do change every day. If you're watching this video 3 days from now, you may very well find the prices have changed, so be sure to check both Amazon and Newegg. All the links are down there to see where the least expensive price is. Now, hello everybody, I see you in chat. That's a good point. I'm not going to be interacting in chat. This is a live stream on YouTube. I will be doing a Q&A live stream on Twitch shortly after this video. It's twitch.tv/techdeals. I will put a link to that stream down in the pinned comment beneath this when I post this on YouTube, and then go over to Twitch to actually do a Q&A interaction talking about the values, pros, and cons of these various parts. This is all just going to be me talking and why I chose the parts and what the benefits are. Now, actually, let me leave it here for a second. So we chose a Ryzen 7 1700. 8-core, 16-thread CPU for value for the money, for a high-end machine, for content creation, for professional use. It really is the best value for the money. We do have an X370. I've been talking a lot about B350 boards. We do have an X370, but this is a really, really good price. 16 gigs of RAM, more on that in a minute. 480 gigs of solid-state drive. If you're spending $1,500 on your machine, go ahead and get that. 3 terabyte hard drive, something easy to make larger or smaller based upon your needs. And this is going to be a fun one to talk about, the Corsair Obsidian 750D mid-tower case. Yes, there are cheaper cases, I know that. We'll talk about that. The MSI Duke Overclock GTX 1080. Before everybody says, why didn't you put a 1080 Ti? You have to strip a lot out to get it in there. That extra $200 is tough. By all means, do it if you want. But for $1,500, I think you have to lose too much to get the Ti in there, so I put the 1080. Now, if you want to play at 4K, yeah, you need the Ti, but for 1440p, you really don't. The excellent Seasonic Focus 750-watt gold-rated power supply. For $1,500, I wouldn't go any less than a gold power supply. And then Windows 10 Pro. Now, Ryzen 7 1700. Why did we go with this CPU? Well, at this price point, there really isn't room to put the 8-core Intel chip, which is the Skylake X, the i7 7820X. Now, it's a good CPU, and it is faster than this chip, but it's a lot more money. There are people who should be on that platform, but generally you need to be at $2,000 or more on your budget before that makes any kind of sense. It doesn't fit within this budget. Why not the i7 7700K? Because if you're looking at building a machine for the future, you don't want to be on a 4-core chip. This machine is designed to last you 5 years. Now, you may need to add RAM. You may need to replace your graphics card halfway through the 5-year cycle. You may add more storage. But the case, power supply, motherboard, CPU will all or should last you 5 years as they are. I would not want to have a high-end computer 3 years from now with 4 cores. It really is going to drop off, and that's why we're not using that. Now, the i7 7700K is the fastest gaming CPU in 2017. By by 10 to 20%. It does beat the Ryzen 7. But 3 years from now, I think the Ryzen 7 is going to beat it. So, and of course, for content creation, professional use, you definitely want those 8 cores. Now, an alternative is you could get a Ryzen 5 1600 and save yourself $100, but you're saving yourself maybe 6 or 7% of the price of your machine, and you're losing 2 cores and 4 threads. I think at $1,500, the Ryzen 7 1700 is the deal. Now, this CPU includes the excellent 95-watt Wraith Spire RGB cooler. It is a very good cooler. Use the included cooler. Set the CPU to 3.7 gigahertz fixed. I've done this myself with this cooler. Stock voltage, no need to adjust it. Almost everybody I've talked to has had no problem hitting 3.7 fixed on all 8 cores. Now, overclocking is not guaranteed. If you want guaranteed or you don't want to overclock, then you'd want the Ryzen 7 1700X or possibly even 1800X, but that's a topic for another video. Everybody I've talked to, the other tech YouTuber reviewers' comments I've seen, as well as my experience with both of my Ryzen 7 1700s. I do have 2 of them now. More on that in a minute. I got one with an iBuyPower pre-built that I talked about on Prime Day. The difference in real-world performance between 3.7 on this and 4.0 on a 1700X or 1800X is not huge. If you make money with your computer, it probably makes sense to go with those chips. If you're just playing with your computer or using it casually, get the 1700. Much better value for the money. I also would not spend any money on a cooler for the 1700. Now, the 1700X and the 1800X don't come with coolers at all, so you have to buy one. But with this, spending money on a cooler, really, it comes with a good one. Don't waste your money. Use the included cooler. An aftermarket cooler is only going to get you another maybe 200 megahertz at most in most cases, maybe 300, but most likely 1 or 200. It's not worth the money. Now, motherboard. Now, I've done several of these build guides recently, and they all had B350 boards. I'm a fan of the B350 boards. You can overclock all Ryzen CPUs, Ryzen 3, Ryzen 5, and Ryzen 7 on all B350 boards. So why do we have an X370 in here? Because we've stepped up in price. If you're building a machine for $600, $800, $1,000, just get a B350. $1,500? You want 5 years use out of your machine? The reason why I would buy this board is because you don't know what the future holds. You don't know how much overclocking you might do. You don't know what the next generation of CPUs are going to be. You don't know if maybe SLI or Crossfire will make a comeback, or perhaps DirectX 12 will actually take off in a big way, and the multi-GPU adapter capability of DirectX 12, which is where it looks like it may be going, and you might want to add a second graphics card. Now, in 2017, I don't recommend SLI or Crossfire. Too few games currently support it. Support was actually better a few years ago, but things can change. And with DirectX 12, there is the possibility we may get better support in the future without requiring specific game profiles. So, this gives you proper Crossfire and proper SLI support for $30 more than the B350 versions. This board is $120 after mail-in rebate. Now, I would not suggest going out and spending $200+ on an X370 board at this price point. At the $1,500 build, that's not worth doing. But this board is about $30 more than a good quality B350. For $30, you get more USB 3 ports, you get 2 more SATA ports, you get proper SLI and Crossfire support, and generally the components are just ever so slightly better. Sometimes you get a better networking card or a better sound chip, not always, but usually. And at $1,500 to $30 shouldn't break the bank. Nice board, 4 RAM slots, multiple expansion slots. It's got the 8-pin CPU power connector to support future CPUs. I like this board. That's why I would choose this for a $1,500 build. RAM. 16 gigs is the minimum. If you've got $1,500 to spend on your computer, there shouldn't be any conversation about anything less than 16 gigs. Now, I've put 8 gigs in some of my other builds, and 8 gigabytes in 2017 is a compromise. But at $1,500, you don't have to compromise. $135, this is Trident Z. This is the good stuff that G.Skill makes. Basically, it goes from the lower end stuff to Ripjaws 5 to Trident Z on the G.Skill line. This G.Skill RAM, I've put this onto several different boards. I have Ripjaws 5 and G.Skill RAM with the latest AMD updated BIOS with the Aegis, or however you pronounce it, 1.0.0.6. I put an extra O in there. BIOS updates. I've had very good luck getting DDR4 3200 out of both B350 and X370 boards. Now, your mileage may vary because overclocking is overclocking and it's never guaranteed. But out of all the memory kits that I have, I've had the best luck with G.Skill over everything else. So I do highly recommend this. And the plus side, at $135, it's very reasonably priced. Now, should you get 32 gigs of RAM? For gaming, no. For content creation or professional use, maybe. I couldn't do what I do on YouTube with 16 gigs of RAM. Literally, it will not work. I've tried it. It's simply, I get out of memory errors in Adobe Premiere Pro. It simply doesn't work. Even at 32, I'm feeling constrained. I'm looking at going to 64. Gag, it is expensive, but I am looking at going to 64 because I'm finding that I have reached 85 to 90% RAM usage just while I'm working on my 4K video edits. Now, that's not a normal use case. That's not what the average person does. But if you run a couple of virtual machines, if you are a software developer, if you are a 4K content creator, 32 gigs is absolutely called for. 64 may not be crazy either, although that's kind of a different price point. If you want 32 gigs of RAM, do be aware. You will probably be able to buy 2 of these kits or the 32 gig 4x8 kit and run it at 2933. I have 2 different G.Skill DDR4 3200 megahertz kits. They are 4 DIMM kits, and they both run at 2933. They will not run at 3200 with all 4 memory modules installed. They will run at 3200 with 2 installed, which is what you're seeing right here. I am finding with Ryzen, when I have 4 DIMMs installed, I have to back the speed off 1 notch in order to get the machine to be stable. Something to keep in mind. Storage. I absolutely love these drives. The SanDisk Ultra 2 is not a brand new drive, but that's okay. It is one of the fastest SATA solid-state drives out there. I just finished this morning testing 20 different solid-state drives. I don't know that you're going to see the video on that tomorrow. If not tomorrow, then Wednesday perhaps. I worked on the charts this morning. I've got all the numbers put into Excel. And here's the short version. This is not as fast as a Samsung 850 EVO, which is the fastest basic level solid state drive for SATA ports you can buy today, not counting the 850 Pro. This is real close. And for $141, that is a killer deal. So if you want a fast drive at a great price, buy this drive. Now, Western Digital Blue, Samsung 850 EVO, Crucial MX300, ADATA SU800 or SU900. All great drives. And to be truthful, while I just sung the praises of this drive and said it's faster than those, and well, not the 850 EVO, but everything else, 10%. The actual difference between the fastest drive I tested and the slowest drive I tested, 20% total. They are all very close. If you find a 480 gig solid state drive for less than this, it might be worth buying. Now, why 480 and why not 240? If you've got $1,500 to spend, you've got programs to run, you've got games to play, you've got applications to run. This is going to give you a lot more free space once you've installed all your programs. You install Windows, you install your Office applications, your video editing programs, a few games. This is still going to leave you a reasonable amount of space left over. A 240 is going to fill up really quick. The price difference is not huge. It's $85 right now for a 240 Ultra 2 versus $141 for 480. So it's less than double the price, but you get more than double the free space after you've installed everything. Windows 10 and programs and applications are going to use up 30, 40-ish gigabytes of space, depending upon what you install and how many programs and how many non-game applications you install. This gives you 240 gigs on top of that. For another $60, I wouldn't go with anything less than a 480 SSD in a $1,500 build. And this is a good one. But as I said, Western Digital Blue, ADATA SU 800 or 900, the Samsung 850 EVO was great. The problem with the 850 EVO at the moment, it's $170. Would I pay another $30 for it? Not really, to be honest with you. This is really, really close. Nice drive. However, many of you have applications that won't fit on this. This is a good deal. Toshiba 3 terabyte, 7200 RPM, $75. Install your big games on here. Do you want to put GTA 5 and Call of Duty Infinite Warfare and Battlefield 1? Put them on here. Now you can put maybe 3 or 4 of your favorite games on the SSD, but games are huge these days. There are a handful of games, Gears of War 4, that are over 100 gigabytes for one game. So that SSD is not going to take you very far. For $75, put your games on here. Now, when you put your games on your hard drive, they're going to load slower. Levels are going to load slower. But the actual frame rate's not going to be effective. Your playability of the game is not going to be affected. Not much, anyway. A little bit here and there, depending upon the game. Some games load assets and levels in the middle of the game. But most games don't actually have a performance difference between a hard drive and an SSD. It's load time, it's level time, it's loading saves, it's saving games, it's getting into online PvP matches, getting in quicker. That's where the SSD helps. When I'm playing games like World of Tanks, World of Warships, and Overwatch, I like to have those on SSDs because it gets me into the match faster. It reduces the delays switching between the loading screens. Single player games doesn't make any difference. So now, as far as is this the drive to buy, that's entirely personal. Western Digital Blue drives, the Seagate Barracudas, or the Toshibas. Buy a 2, buy a 3, buy a 6. How much space do you need? The price per gigabyte usually gets better up to about the 3 or 4 gigabyte level, and then it actually starts to get worse. Most of the 6 gigabyte drives actually cost more per gigabyte than the 3s. You can usually buy 2 of the 3s for less than 1 of the 6. Buy however much you need, and maybe you have a hard drive and don't need one at all. Personal choice. Case. Now, case choices are very personal. I understand that some of you have your favorites. Do you like an NZXT? Do you like Cooler Master? Something else? Buy what you like. Here's why I like this case. It's not the looks, which are pretty plain. Although if you like the black industrial sort of just stealth-looking case, it's a nice-looking case. But it's not flashy. It's not shiny. It's functional. I own several Obsidian cases. I have reviewed them multiple times on my channel in the past. I built my $4,000 Ultimate machine. In this case, is Big Brother, the 750D, which is about $50 more expensive than this, but it's also much taller with more room in it. This thing has a ton of space inside. Absolute ton. The airflow is exceptional. Future expansion is exceptional. Room to install liquid coolers is exceptional. Want to put a 240 or 280 millimeter CPU cooler and a 240 or 280 millimeter graphics card cooler? Want to really trick out your computer? Maybe not today, maybe in the future. This case has room for it. Want to add a second graphics card, but you're concerned about total airflow with 2 graphics cards? This case will handle it. Now you could buy an S340 NZXT for $30 less than this, and for this machine, as I've spec'd it, actually that would be just fine. But that case does not have the cooling upgrade options in the future. A case like this should easily last you 10 years, well beyond the Ryzen 7 CPU itself. One of the reasons why I think it's worth spending a little bit more on your case is you may end up changing everything in this case except the power supply, more on that in a minute, over the next 10 years. Spend $30 extra, get a case with more fan mounts, more hard drive mounts, more expansion options. See this, See this drive cage right here? You can buy another one for $15 and add 3 more drive bays inside this case. It can be moved around. You can mount one hanging underneath this. You can mount a front radiator right here. You can take this out completely if you don't want it. There's room on the top to mount one. You can mount an exhaust radiator here. It's got tons and tons of options. Great cable management with this motherboard tray and the grommets behind it. I love the Obsidian series. No tempered glass, no RGB lighting. It's not flashy like some of the other cases. It's functional. If you're like me and you stick your case under your desk, I love these things. And for the extra money, you will get 10 plus good years of use out of this case. Absolutely recommend it for a $1,500 build. Now, I'm going to skip the graphics card for a second and go to the power supply because I said 10 years for the power supply as well. Hang on a second. I need some coffee after all that talking. Excuse me. You talk straight for 20 minutes, you gotta take a breath. I'm currently doing, and this part's gonna age in this video. I'm currently doing a giveaway with Seasonic on the 550 watt version of this. If I can remember, I'll put a link down below, but it's on my channel in the past few days. This is the 750 watt version rather than the 550 watt version. For a $1,500 build, I would spend the extra $20 or $30 and get the 750 watt version. First up, 10-year warranty. Most of the power supplies in this price range do not have a 10-year warranty. The case will last you 10 years, the power supply will last you 10 years. You can replace everything else in this machine 3 times over in the next 10 years if you want to, or once at the 5-year point, and keep this. This is a fully modular power supply. Only use the cables you need, flat black cables. It'll look nice, no ketchup and mustard color. It's not going to be ugly. It's an 80+ gold certified power supply with high quality components. This is not a cheap generic power supply that has had flat black cables added to it. It is more expensive than some of the other choices. You can get a EVGA power supply that has black sleeved cables with a shorter warranty, like a 5-year warranty, for $20 or $30 less than this, and still have it be 80+ gold. But if you're spending $1,500, make your machine look nice, get a power supply with a 10-year warranty. This has got a 120mm fluid dynamic bearing fan that is very, very quiet and is controllable. There is a mode switch on the back, which I need to talk about when I actually do the unboxing, and I'll do a build with this power supply. It's a few dollars more, and it's also a few dollars more. You can, if you want. This is the one that we're doing the giveaway. This is $30 less, $550. $550. Excuse me, $550. 550 watts is all you need for the build as I've spec'd it here. You don't need 750. But with a Ryzen 7 1700, with a power supply with a 10-year warranty, with a case that will easily last you 10 years, with a case that will upgrade to bigger and faster, to liquid cooled, to dual graphics cards if that becomes a thing again, the extra 200 watts means you don't have to change your power supply. If you want to put 2 graphics cards in, that extra 200 watts is going to make a difference. You want to put a second 1080, or maybe in the future 2 RX Vegas or 2 RX Vega 2s when those come out in a year or so, you'll be glad that you spent the extra $20 or $30 now to future-proof yourself. This is the kind of component you should buy a good quality unit of, because you can keep it a long time without having to replace it. This is also why I chose the graphics card I did. Now, inevitably, somebody's going to say, $1,500, you could easily get a GTX 1080 Ti in that build. Yes, you can. Absolutely, you can. But I didn't, because it requires compromises that I don't personally agree with. If you disagree, that's fine. Change the power supply to 550. 550 will run a 1080 Ti and a Ryzen 7 all day long without any problem. Change the case to an S340 and NZXT case. Make the SSD 240 gigs if you want. Switch the motherboard to a B350 if you want. Make all those changes and boom, you've got your 1080 Ti. It's only $190 more for a 1080 Ti. Lots more performance. But you give up a lot to get there. You give up the future case, the power supply, you give up storage, you give up a better upgradable motherboard. If the 1080 Ti is that important to you, do it. But just keep in mind that 5 years from now, that 1080 Ti is going to be either obsolete or complete bargain basement, whereas the other components will still be rocking strong. So in terms of longevity, the 1080 Ti is not actually the best place to put your money. If you're playing at 1440p, the 1080 is all you need. The 1080 Ti is nice, but the 1080 is really all you need. $509. This is a factory overclock card. It's extremely quiet. Now, I have one of these, but I've got the 1080 Ti version, and it is very, very quiet. It's very cool running. It has a nice backplate. The fans are slow running. It's got all the connectivity you want. Now, there's others you can buy. Gigabyte has a triple fan card. Their WindForce card, same price. There are several cards in this price range you can buy if perhaps you prefer the appearance of a different one. Any of the dual fan or triple fan cards, EVGA, ASUS, MSI, Gigabyte, are all fine. But this, out of all the $509 cards available today right now as I'm live streaming this, is personally the one that I would buy because of its size. If you actually look at this versus the Gigabyte, this has a taller custom PCB. The Gigabyte doesn't. The Gigabyte actually, if I can get it there, the Gigabyte actually ends right up at the top. This is a taller card. It has a larger heatsink than the Gigabyte, which is why I picked it. That doesn't make the Gigabyte a bad card. But this does have a better custom PCB. It does have a larger, heavier heatsink. It's the one I would pick at this price point. So for 1080p, for 1440p gaming, high detail or better, this is what I would buy. Now, if you're only interested in playing at 1080p, you could save $100 and buy a 1070. But consider the future. If you've got $1,500 to spend, this is about 25% faster than a 1070. You're buying yourself potentially another year of future-proofing. I don't like the term future-proofing, but what you're essentially saying is if you play at 1080p, this card is a little bit overkill. But what it does mean is that you'll be playing games at 1080p Christmas 2018, possibly Christmas 2019. I don't have a crystal ball. I mean, I can't say that for sure, whereas a 1070 or 1060 won't be. So if you've got $1,500, consider this even at 1080p if you want the future. Now, if your primary use case of this computer is content creation or professional use, if gaming is not your primary intention with this machine, you don't need a 1080. Generally, a 1060 is what I would put in here. If you're using Adobe Premiere Pro or Sony Vegas or something similar to that, unless you are using heavy effects. If you use Adobe After Effects heavily, and I don't mean a little bit, I mean heavily, there is virtually no performance difference in video encoding between a 1060 and a 1070. And yes, I've tested that. At least with the videos that I make, it's all CPU bound. Now, there are some people who may be 3D animators or you do different types of content where your graphics card does matter. If so, that's going to be on a case-by-case situation. Other people who are just interested in 8 cores, you can save yourself a lot of money here. A 3 or 6 gigabyte 1060 is going to be in the $220 to $270 range. You can knock a bunch of cost off of this machine if you don't care about gaming or you're just an extremely casual gamer. But for somebody who's serious about playing Battlefield 1, Grand Theft Auto 5, Mass Effect Andromeda, Ghost Recon Wildlands, The Division, and all the upcoming AAA games for both Christmas 2017 and Christmas 2018, don't buy less than a 1080 if you're looking for 18 months of AAA gaming at high detail or better at 1440p. So, enough of the graphics card. Windows 10, I've covered this multiple times before. I'm not going to get into the details of what Kingwin is. You can watch my other streams or my Windows 10 for $30 videos. But I have bought a bunch of keys from Kingwin and been very successful with doing so. $28.19 is what it's currently going for. If you're looking for an inexpensive copy of Windows and you want to get it activated online, you can certainly go this route rather than spending $100 or $150 going directly through Microsoft or Amazon or whatnot. Now, having said all this, are you interested in, roughly this computer, but you don't want to build one? Now, I cover one of these each time I do a build guide. Let me be clear. Not everybody wants to build a computer. If that's not you, fair enough. By all means, build. There are benefits to building your own machine. You learn about your computer. You get better at troubleshooting it, tinkering with it. You can upgrade it over the years. If you derive a sense of satisfaction out of putting your machine together and turning it on and seeing it run the first time and knowing that you built that computer, say no else. Say nothing else. Go build your own machine. Not everybody wants to do that. There was a post on my last computer build guide. Somebody posted down below in the comment section. He listed his parts and he said, I just assembled my computer. It's Ryzen 5 and this motherboard and everything else. And I turned it on and it didn't boot. Please help me. Now what? If you don't have spare parts, you're stuck. What's wrong? Did you assemble it? Did you miss a cable? Is your RAM bad? Is your motherboard bad? You can try reseating everything, but if you don't have another working computer, what is your backup plan if you press that power button, it doesn't work? What's your plan if you press the power button, it turns on, and halfway through installing Windows, it crashes? Now, in my experience, motherboards and RAM go bad before everything else does. Knock on wood, I've never had a CPU go bad. I've never had a graphics card go bad. I know graphics cards can go bad. I've never actually had one go bad. RAM is usually the first thing I look at when I have a problem with a machine. Not everybody wants to do this. If you don't, let me show you an alternative. $1,500, Ryzen 7 1700X, it's actually a better CPU, 16 gigs of RAM, slightly smaller SSD 240, smaller hard drive 1 terabyte, GTX 1080, same graphics card. That is a customized NZXT 340-ish case. I actually have one of those. I have that iBuyPower Ryzen machine that I picked up from Prime Day. It's the same case. It's a nice case. It's a tempered glass side panel. It's not as large as the Corsair Obsidian 450D, not as upgradable. Generally, iBuyPower puts 600 watt power supplies in these things. This machine has some compromises with it that your custom build machine won't. But it does have one huge benefit. Click add to cart, order it, it arrives in a couple days, take it out of the box, put it on your desk, plug it in, turn it on. Hey look, Windows boots. You don't have to install Windows, you don't have to plug anything in. And if it has a problem in the first 30 days, you don't even have to go to iBuyPower. Newegg will not only replace it, but keep in mind that Newegg will pay return shipping. They'll provide you with a free return shipping label if you have a problem with it. So you say, hey, Newegg, computer doesn't work. Send me another one. And they'll send you another one. They'll give you a UPS label or a FedEx label to send it back to them. After that, you have a warranty through iBuyPower, and they'll take care of it. Is your system not booting? Does it crash constantly? Do you have some kind of hardware problem? Instead of having to play your own diagnostic technician, you just call them up and let them deal with it. As far as the quality of parts, my Ryzen 7, now it's not this exact iBuyPower, but it was a Ryzen 7 1700. And that's why I now have two Ryzen 7 1700s. One of those chips was sent to me by AMD for the launch. The other I got in this machine. This computer, besides coming in an NZXT case, had a Asus B350 Prime motherboard. It had an MSI graphics card in it. It had a did I have the Thermaltake? I think it had a Thermaltake 600 watt power supply in it. 8 RAM. These are all name brand parts. So if you're concerned about buying a machine like this thinking it's like what Acer and Dell sells, it's not. It's all standard off-the-shelf parts. In fact, the Asus B350 Prime that came in my Ryzen 7 iBuyPower machine, it had the launch BIOS on it. So I had to flash the BIOS. There were 7 BIOS, I think it was 6 or 7 BIOS releases between that and what it came with. And that motherboard now has the GS, I can never pronounce it, 1.0.0.6 BIOS. I upgraded the BIOS. I stuck the Ripjaws 5 G.Skill RAM in, DDR4 3200. Now they don't call it XMP in the BIOS, but they do call it DOCP, which is XMP is an Intel term. AMD slightly different in the Asus board. First try, DDR4 3200, no issues. So, if you don't want to build a machine, I recommend this. And that's actually my second iBuyPower machine. My first was many, many years ago. My first i7 was actually in that. In any case, This has been the $1,500 Ryzen 7 1700 computer build guide, both the options that I would consider that you take a look at for building your own, as well as a pre-built choice if you're not interested in building your own. As I said at the beginning of this video, this is a starting guide. This is a suggested build. Change it to suit your needs. By all means, if you want a different case, you want different RAM, a different motherboard, it's your system. Build it any way you want. Now, I'm going to post this video here in a few minutes to YouTube so you can watch it. Then I'm going to hop over to Twitch and start a Q&A live stream for, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half or so and talking. I haven't been interacting in chat, but I'll be interacting over on Twitch, twitch.tv/techdeals. So, if you liked this video and you found it helpful, be sure to like it. Be sure to subscribe to my channel using the link down below. Leave your comments down below this video. And if you found it helpful and useful, remember to use those links to Amazon and Newegg below. They do help, and it really is appreciated. Even if you don't buy the exact parts that are listed here, if you use those links while shopping, it still makes a difference. Thank you so much for watching. I will see all of you over on Twitch.